The floor was cold. My ears rang. Blood trickled past my jawline and onto the kitchen tile. Mom stood frozen by the sink. My brother? Breathing hard. Still holding the picture frame he'd just smashed into my skull. Then, silence. Until Mom broke it. He didn't mean it, she whispered, eyes flicking toward the door. We're not calling anyone. You know how much he has at stake. I didn't answer. Because I couldn't yet. Everything was spinning, except the part of me that suddenly, sharply knew. This wasn't a family. It was a crime scene with people who shared DNA. They didn't take me to the ER. I took myself. Sat in the waiting room with a towel pressed to my head. A woman handed me forms. I don't even remember signing them. When the doctor entered, she didn't say much at first. She cleaned the wound gently, parting my hair like it wasn't soaked in betrayal. Then she looked straight at me. No hesitation. No pity. Just a steady, almost sacred kind of fury. We're not covering for him this time. Before I could speak, she turned and picked up the phone. Dialed the police. My name is Raina. And if you think this story ends with an apology or a family reunion, keep watching. Because what happens when the person who's supposed to protect you uses silence as a weapon? What happens when blood becomes currency? And you're tired of paying? That night, they arrested him at our house. My mother called me 17 times. Left voicemails that swung between begging and blaming. I didn't answer. Because that wasn't my mother anymore. That was a woman who chose a future for one child. And a cover-up for the other. I stood by the window in a borrowed hoodie, watching blue and red lights bounce off hospital glass. And for the first time in my life, I felt seen. The hospital let me stay the night. Observation, they said. But I think the nurse just didn't want to send me home. I didn't sleep. I watched the second hand on the wall clock move. 3 full revolutions before sunrise. At 6:03 a.m., my mother texted, "This could have ruined his entire career. I hope you're happy." I stared at the screen like it might grow fangs. Then powered off the phone. I wasn't going to explain my trauma to a woman who treated it like an inconvenience. Later that morning, the social worker arrived. Her voice was soft, but not weak. "You don't need to defend them. We've seen this before." I wanted to scream. Then why didn't anyone stop it? But instead, I just said, "I'm not going back." She nodded like she already knew, and handed me a packet with shelter options, legal resources, and emergency contact numbers. I wasn't a child, but that didn't mean I wasn't in danger. The news broke later that day. Local paper. Small section. Quiet wording. College senior arrested on domestic assault charges involving sibling. They didn't use our names, but people knew. And by that evening, it was on Facebook. My cousin messaged, "What the hell happened?" I didn't reply, because for years, they all saw him throw things. Saw me flinch when he walked in a room. And no one said anything. Not once. Now, suddenly, everyone was curious. Suddenly, everyone wanted the whole story. But where were they when I had to wear long sleeves in June? Where were they when I lied about falling down the stairs 3 times? Mom left one final voicemail that night. "He's your brother. Families forgive." I stared at the wall, head still aching, and whispered, "Families also protect." And she didn't. 2 days later, the detective called. "Raina, we've filed the charge officially. You're safe. But you should know, your mother posted his bail." Of course she did. She didn't bring me soup. She didn't check if I could walk straight yet. She brought him home. Like the glass in my scalp never happened. Like her son's future was the only thing worth bandaging. I moved into a temporary safe house. A converted women's shelter. Warm tea. Shared rooms. And stories too heavy for daytime TV. One girl told me her dad used to lock the fridge. Another hadn't been hugged in 5 years. None of us were alike. And yet, somehow, we were exactly the same. My court advocate said we could press for a no-contact order. I said yes. Immediately. But then she paused. "There's something else," she said. "Your brother's attorney filed a character defense packet. Your mom gave a letter." I read it. She called me emotional. Said I had a history of dramatizing situations. Said my brother was a model student under stress, not a threat.
She ended it with,
We're a good family. This was just a misunderstanding. I stared at the word we like it was poison. We were never anything. That night, I sat with a pen and a blank form. Victim's statement. 3 pages. I didn't hold back. I wrote about the bruises, yes. But I also wrote about the birthdays he ruined. The broken plates. The way my mom would look away every time I cried. I finished it with 1 sentence. If you let him walk, you're teaching him that hurting women has no cost, and that mothers can co-sign it with silence. I signed my name, Raina Collins, and I underlined it twice, because if they were going to keep pretending I was invisible, I'd make sure my name was the last thing they read. The courtroom smelled like old paper and bleach. My hands were ice. My ribs still ached when I breathed too deep. But I wore my father's watch and a navy blazer I borrowed from a shelter worker named Elise. She hugged me before I stepped in. Said, "You're not here to beg. You're here to be heard." My brother sat across the aisle. Clean shave. Pressed suit. Eyes rehearsed.
Next to him, Mom.
Her hair done. Makeup flawless. Wearing pearls like it was Sunday service. She didn't look at me once. But when the judge asked if I was ready to speak, she flinched. I stood. Legs shaking. Voice low but sharp. I am. And then I read. The whole thing. The bruises. The concussions. The things they said after. How silence was safer than truth in our house. I told them how my mother taught me to hide, and my brother learned that power didn't need apology. And when I got to the last line, if you let him walk, I promise you, I won't be the last girl he hurts. You could hear a pin drop. The prosecutor nodded once, solemn. The judge asked no questions. He simply said, "We'll reconvene in 2 days for ruling." Outside, reporters waited. I didn't stop for interviews. But one of them yelled out, "Raina, any regrets?" I turned just for a second.
No.
I finally told the truth. Let them figure out what to do with it. Back at the shelter, the women clapped when I walked in. One said, "You were ice on that stand." Chilling. I smiled, but inside I felt something else. Not pride, not vengeance, just stillness. The kind you get after years of holding your breath. Because I knew something now, even if the judge didn't believe me.
I did.
And that was enough to never be silent again. 2 days later, the verdict came in. I didn't sit in the courtroom this time. I stood. I wanted to feel it. The judge didn't drag it out. Guilty. 1 count of aggravated assault. No probation. 90 days in county lockup. Mandatory anger management. No contact for 2 years. My brother's lawyer tried to object. My mother started crying. But not for me. Never for me. She ran after the bailiff like this was a funeral, grabbing at her son like she was the one being sentenced.
Me?
I just exhaled. 1 breath. But the deepest I'd taken in years. As I stepped outside the courthouse, my phone buzzed. An unknown number. The message?
Hi. You don't know me.
I was your brother's ex. I just wanted to say thank you. What you did saved someone else too. I didn't reply, but I saved the message. Later that night, while packing up my things at the shelter, Elise walked in. "There's something you need to know," she said gently. "Your mother left a voicemail for the director." Of course she did. She says you exaggerated. She's claiming mental instability. She's trying to get your statement discredited after the fact. I laughed. A soft, bitter sound. She's still protecting him. Elise nodded. But she doesn't know this isn't just a courtroom anymore. This is a movement. She handed me a file. Inside, the offer letter. A nonprofit for women's legal advocacy had seen my case. They wanted to hire me.
To speak.
To write. To help other women take the mic back. "You up for it?" she asked. I looked down at my bandaged hand, then up at the door, and said, "I was made for it. Because here's the thing. My mother used to say my silence was strength. But now I know. Silence isn't strength. Voice is. and mine was just getting started. My first speech was at a community college. Tiny stage, 30 metal chairs, 2 microphones, one of them crackling. I still wore the navy blazer, still traced the watch on my wrist before speaking, like Dad's hands were steadying mine from somewhere unseen. I looked at the crowd, girls with notebooks, mothers in the back, one boy in a hoodie, eyes locked on me like he was learning what pain actually looked like. I began. Sometimes, your own house becomes a crime scene, and sometimes the people who built it hand you the silence like a weapon. I told them everything. The wall, the blood, the cover-up. But I didn't end with revenge. I ended with power. I am not the girl they raised me to be. I am the woman I became in spite of them. Afterward, they clapped. Some cried. One girl hugged me so tight, I felt her ribs shake. But what I didn't expect was the article the next morning. Mother of convicted abuser responds to daughter's speech. There it was. A glossy op-ed. Photos from her front porch. Her quote, "She's fabricating to stay relevant. We're the ones truly suffering." My hands didn't shake. Not this time. Because I knew what was coming. By noon, the comments turned. You left her bleeding. You bailed out an abuser. If silence was strength, why are you the only one talking now? Mom deleted the post. Her salon Yelp page flooded with 1-star reviews. And me? I didn't post anything. Didn't tweet. Didn't clap back. I went to the next school. And the next. Because legacy isn't offended with internet rage. It's built with proof. And my voice had become undeniable. I wasn't famous. I was free. And I'd learned that sometimes the best revenge is living out loud in a world that begged you to stay quiet. The letter came on a Tuesday. No return address. Just my name, handwritten, soft slant. I almost didn't open it, but something about the quiet weight of it made me pause. Inside, one page, torn at the edges like whoever wrote it had second-guessed every word. The handwriting was familiar. I watched the video, the one from the campus talk. You stood straighter than I've ever seen you. You didn't stutter once. I don't expect forgiveness, but I needed you to know that I finally see it. What we did, what we let happen, and what you carried alone. There was no signature, but I knew it was my sister. She hadn't spoken to me since the arrest. She'd vanished into silence the way Mom always taught us. Keep it pretty, keep it polite, and keep it buried. But that letter? It cracked something. Not forgiveness. Just space. That same night, I passed the mirror in my tiny apartment. No bruises. No taped ribs. Just me, untouched, unbroken. I reached into the drawer and pulled out the old court transcript. My testimony. Printed. Highlighted.
Filed.
I slid it into an envelope and wrote one word on the front. Remember. Then I mailed it. To my mother. No return address. Just her name. Because some stories aren't retold for sympathy. They're reminders. And sometimes, even a woman who spent her whole life silencing others needs to be haunted by the voice she tried to erase. The next week, the nonprofit offered me a speaking series. 8 cities, 3 months, fully paid. Before I left, I stood at the window. Sunlight broke across the table. And for the first time, I let myself say it aloud. I'm proud of her. Not the girl who stayed silent, but the woman who stepped into the fire and came out louder. 3 months later, I stood on a stage in New York City. The lights were warm, the room packed, every seat filled with people who knew what it felt like to be called dramatic. When all they were was bleeding, I spoke slower this time, not because I was nervous, but because I finally understood the weight of my voice. I used to think silence made me strong, that if I didn't cry, if I didn't speak, if I just held it all, I'd survive. But silence didn't save me. Truth did. Afterward, a woman approached me, older, wrinkles like rivers down her cheeks. She didn't say anything, just handed me a folded photo. Inside, a picture of her daughter, smiling. Gone too soon. She mouthed the words. Thank you for speaking when we couldn't. I nodded. No hug. Just hands pressed together. A silent kind of grace. That night, I returned to my hotel. Checked my phone for the first time in hours. One voicemail. From the shelter. From Elise. Raina, your mom stopped by. She didn't ask to see you. Just left a small box. Said you'd know what to do with it. I returned 2 weeks later. Inside the box? My baby blanket. A photograph of me at 5. A note that simply read, I can't undo what I allowed, but I can carry it now. I hope someday that matters. It didn't change what happened. It didn't heal the past. But for the first time, I didn't feel invisible to the woman who birthed me. I sat on the porch of the shelter, watched a girl run across the lawn with her backpack too big for her body. And I thought, we are not our families. We are the chapters we write after the fire. That night, I opened a fresh journal, page 1, and wrote the first sentence. She was never weak. She was waiting to be heard. The next morning, I mailed the manuscript draft to a publisher. A memoir, titled, The Loudest Room in the House. My name below it, bold, black ink, Raina Collins. And this time, there was no silence left to bury. At the lawyer's office, I discovered my parents left me nothing. My sister got it all, the house, the stocks, the summer property by the lake, even my grandmother's emerald brooch. They didn't even look ashamed. Dad said, you can earn for yourself. You're capable. She's the chosen one. Chosen. Like this was some divine pageant, and I hadn't even made it past auditions. My name is Serena Knox, I'm 30. And if you think you know how this ends, stay tuned. Because what happens when the family that raised you like a warrior suddenly expects you to bow? What happens when capability becomes the excuse for cruelty? I didn't argue.
Didn't cry.
I simply nodded at the will, folded my hands in my lap, and let the silence speak for me. And then, I canceled everything. The $1,100 auto transfer for Mom's meds. The $800 that went toward Dad's mortgage. The tuition aid for my nephew. The emergency stash they'd tap into every Christmas like clockwork.
Gone.
All of it. They didn't notice, not at first. They were busy popping champagne with Marissa, toasting her inheritance blessing. But a month later, my phone pinged. Mortgage is due. Can you cover it this month? I stared at the message for a second, then replied, not mine. No emojis. No punctuation. Just cold, clean truth. 5 minutes later, she tried calling. I didn't pick up. Some debts aren't financial. Some debts are emotional. And this time, the bill wasn't coming to me. The thing about silence is it grows teeth. After I replied, not mine, my mother didn't call again.
Not that day.
But 2 hours later, my dad emailed. Subject, re-mortgage. Body, you're being selfish. We did our best. Don't let bitterness ruin the family. I stared at it for a long time. Not because it hurt, but because it didn't. I remember the nights I'd spent patching this family together like a seamstress on her last needle. Dad's back pain treatments? I paid. Mom's dental implants? I covered. The week Marissa dropped out of college and ran to Cabo, I flew there and dragged her back. But in that lawyer's office, I wasn't a daughter. I was the afterthought. The capable one. The next morning, I walked by the bakery I used to love as a kid and saw Marissa inside, laughing, coffee in one hand, an iPad in the other. She was tapping through house listings, big houses, with porches, pools. She'd inherited everything, and she wanted more. I didn't go in. I simply opened my banking app and clicked freeze on the emergency family account they still had access to. It was $18,340. I transferred it into a locked savings account in my name. Later that evening, a string of texts popped up from Marissa. Hey, weird, I can't pull money. Did something happen to the account? Mom said you're being vindictive. Please just talk to her. But I wasn't being vindictive. I was finally being fair. And fair, for the first time, felt like peace. Marissa's text stopped after midnight. I imagined her, scrolling through our shared account, realizing every dollar she'd taken for granted was now just numbers locked behind my name. But I didn't do it to punish her. I did it to see who they were without me. 3 days passed. Silence. Then, the phone rang, not my cell, but the landline I hadn't touched in years. It was still plugged in near the entryway. I let it go to voicemail. My mother's voice crackled through the machine like an old radio. "We know what you did, and you're making a mistake. Come to Sunday dinner, and let's talk. You're still family."
Still family.
Those 2 words, they clung to me like wet fabric. I stared at the family photo above my fireplace. I was 16 in it. Braces. Holding a cake I baked myself. Marissa was already glowing, golden, gifted. My parents had their arms around her. I was nearby. Sunday dinner came. I didn't go. Instead, I booked a cabin 3 hours away. Packed a bag.
Drove.
Halfway there, I stopped at a gas station and got a message from my old college roommate, Lindsay. "Saw your sister's post. You okay?" Attached was a screenshot of Marissa's Instagram story. It was a picture of my parent house. The caption read, "When your fam tries to punish you, but forgets they still owe $1,200 on last month's credit card bill. Oops." She tagged me.
Publicly.
That's when I smiled. Because what she didn't know was, I'd already closed that credit card the day before. And the collector? He was calling, but not me. By Monday morning, their silence turned to noise. Missed calls. Blocked numbers. Emails with subject lines like, "Urgent. Please."
We didn't mean it that way.
I didn't open a single one. Instead, I watched the balance in their once joint accounts drain into late fees, interest penalties, and default notices, all of which used to land on my desk. Now, not my desk. Not my name. Not my problem. Tuesday night, as I sat on the porch of my rented cabin watching rain streak down pine needles, I got a text from my father. "We were wrong. You're not just capable. You're essential." I stared at it. It was the closest thing to an apology I'd ever gotten from him. But it wasn't really an apology, was it? It was desperation, rebranded. By Wednesday, they started showing up. First Marissa, parked outside my apartment building, pretending to be just in the neighborhood. Then my mother, standing in line behind me at the grocery store, like she didn't drive 40 minutes to get there. She said nothing, just stared at the debit card I pulled from my wallet, the one she used to call ours. I said, without turning, "You shouldn't have posted that toast." Her lip quivered. "It wasn't meant to hurt you." I bagged my groceries. "Then maybe next time don't label me back up." The woman behind us in line shifted awkwardly. The scanner beeped. My mother didn't follow me out. She just stood there, the automatic doors closing between us like a slow, final curtain. And as they did, I realized something. They hadn't just underestimated me. They'd built their lives on the belief I wouldn't walk away. But I had. And the silence was finally mine. By Friday, I knew they'd run out of options. That's when Ezra showed up at my door. Not with his usual swagger, no gold watch, no smug grin, just him, in a wrinkled hoodie, clutching a grocery bag like it was a peace offering. I didn't invite him in. He stood on the doormat, shifting awkwardly. "Can we talk?" I leaned on the frame. "Depends. Is this about the house, the car, or the canceled party venue?" He laughed nervously. "You made your point." "I wasn't making one," I said. "I was just correcting a long-standing miscalculation." He paused. "They're scared. Dad's worried about foreclosure. Mom's pretending she isn't crying every day." I folded my arms. "And you?" He looked down. "I'm angry," he admitted. "At myself. I thought they were right about you." That caught me off guard. He continued, voice tight. "But you showed up for them. Over and over. And they used you like a vending machine. I went along with it." For a moment, I saw the brother I remembered. Not the golden child, just the kid who used to sneak me half his Halloween candy. I let the silence stretch. Then I said, gently, "They taught us one of us had to lose for the other to win. They were wrong." He nodded. "So, can we fix this?" I glanced past him, toward the street where Mom's car idled. Only if you walk away from their version of winning. He turned to look, then slowly stepped back, away from the house. Alone. And for the first time, maybe ever, that felt like a beginning, not a betrayal. 3 days passed. Ezra didn't come back. But someone else did. At exactly 9:12 a.m. on a cloudy Wednesday, I opened my front door to see my mother standing there. Not with groceries. Not with guilt. With a clipboard. "Let's be civil," she said, without a hello. I brought documents. Legal ones. I stepped aside, not to let her in, but to make sure the neighbors saw I wasn't the one causing a scene. She held up the folder. "A repayment proposal," she explained. "You'll get your money back. Gradually. We can't do everything at once." I raised an eyebrow. "I never asked for repayment." "Well," she sighed, lips tightening, "you've made things quite difficult. You cut the utilities. Canceled the fundraiser bookings. Pulled out of Ezra's co-signed lease." "I pulled out of your expectations," I said, coolly. "The rest was just math." She blinked. I continued. "You built a house of cards with my name at the bottom." I just stopped holding it up. Her voice dropped. "You owe this family," she hissed. "Everything we've done was to protect your brother's future." I folded my arms. "And what about mine?" A silence followed.
Heavy. Hollow.
Then she softened, a practice move. "We can start fresh," she whispered. "If you just come home." I looked her dead in the eye. "I am home," I said, pointing at the ground beneath me. "This one's mine. Paid with real sweat, not stolen favors." She left the clipboard on the porch. No goodbye. As I closed the door, I noticed the fine print on the document. Condition: no further public discussion of family matters. I smiled. They weren't trying to pay me back. They were trying to shut me up. The clipboard sat on my porch for 2 days. I didn't sign it. Didn't move it. Just let the rain warp the edges. By Friday morning, a courier showed up with an envelope, certified mail, signature required. Inside, a letter from their attorney. "This is a formal notice requesting you cease public statements regarding family matters. In exchange, repayment of funds will begin immediately. Failure to comply may result in legal action." I laughed. Out loud. Because here it was on paper, what I'd known all along. They didn't care about repair. They cared about control. I slid the letter under a magnet on my fridge next to my niece's crayon drawing. The caption read, in messy purple letters, "Auntie Serena equals hero." Then I opened my laptop. Attached every bank transfer, every text, every screenshot of their chosen one speeches. Forwarded the entire packet to a journalist friend at a local business paper. The headline went live that night. "Capable daughter or silent bank. How one woman's family used her as a financial lifeline." It wasn't salacious. It wasn't vengeful. It was just facts. By morning, my inbox overflowed with messages from women I didn't know. "Thank you for telling this story. This is my life, too." I thought I was alone. For once, the narrative wasn't theirs. It was mine. And the more they tried to shame me into silence, the louder my truth became, without a single insult or threat. That evening, a black SUV idled across the street. Ezra got out. Alone. No pearls. No clipboard. No lawyer. Just a folded piece of paper in his hands. When he reached my porch, he held it out. A handwritten note. For words. "I'm done. I'm sorry." I read his note once. Then again. I didn't text back. Didn't call. Didn't invite him in. Instead, I walked past him. Down the porch steps. Into the cool morning air, where the breeze didn't carry guilt. Just clarity. At the corner cafe, I ordered the same latte I'd bought 1,000 times, but this time, it tasted different. Lighter. Like it belonged only to me. My phone buzzed. Voicemails from Mom. Texts from Dad. Even one from the cousin who hadn't spoken to me in years. But I didn't listen. I didn't need to. Because I had already answered. With silence, with boundaries, with a peace they couldn't bargain back. I donated the crayon drawing to a local gallery doing a show on unsung women. The caption read, Auntie Serena equals hero. Visitors left sticky notes beside it, sharing stories of their own invisible battles. Later that week, I signed a lease on a tiny writing studio. Not a big purchase, just a space with sunlight, bookshelves, and a lock they didn't have a key to. A place to be more than their bank, more than their backup. Just Serena. I didn't seek revenge. I didn't shame them online. I did something more powerful. I stopped being useful to people who only loved me when it served them. They kept calling. But peace doesn't ring loud. It just settles. Quietly.
Deeply.
And as I placed the final letter from their lawyer, unopened, into the shredder, I smiled. Some things don't deserve to be read. Some closures don't need permission. Just a locked door. And a woman on the other side. Finally free.